What up, what up? Salvador Briggman here. Welcome back to the Crowdfunding Demystified podcast. On this podcast, we talk about Kickstarter, Indiegogo, crowdfunding. How do you smash your goal? How do you raise money from the crowd? And we also talk about things like Reg CF, regulation crowdfunding. We talk about WeFunder. We talk about equity crowdfunding. And at the end of the day, I really started this podcast because I was having so many different conversations of insider information, right? In the industry, just kind of talking shop. And I'm like, man, it would be so beneficial to have my readers have access to these kinds of conversations. And I was kind of finding, I almost felt like a little bit crazy, honestly, because I was discovering all these new tactics and trends and tools and strategies in order to really accelerate your goal when it comes to crowdfunding and to raise more money. And I'm like, how cool would it be if we could just deliver this to the audience? And at that time I was a blogger. I started as a blogger in 2012 with crowdcrux.com, my baby, my website, right? And really my goal was just to share education information. But I got to that point where I was like, you know what? I got to get this stuff out there to you guys. I really got to share some of these things that I feel like are just honestly not a lot of people are talking about. And I don't know why, but I really feel like there is a massive movement that's happening right now that we're going to talk about on today's podcast that literally no one else is talking about in this industry. And I don't know why. I don't know if they're trying to keep it from you. I don't know why, right? But there's definitely something we got to explore today. So what I want to talk about today is what I call like a rocket ship that's about to take off, and it's already taking off. And you maybe haven't hopped onto this vehicle, which is light speed going down the highway, but you're gonna want to because a rising tide lifts all ships, right? If you're back in the day and all of a sudden you hear an announcement that gold was discovered, right, in California, you want to go west. You want to stake a claim to that opportunity, my friends. And having a map to get you there is also a little bit more helpful. So first of all, in today's podcast, we interviewed an entrepreneur, an individual who raised over $1 million, specifically $1,193,579 using WeFunder, which is a Reg CF, also known as an equity crowdfunding platform or portal. Now, equity crowdfunding is so new and it's really something that's kind of just getting started, but it's already seeing tons of momentum. And you think of this almost as like Kickstarter or Indiegogo, but the difference is that when people back your campaign, when they support your campaign, they're actually becoming an investor in your company. So think of it this way, rather than having a bunch of people that are pre-ordering your product or a bunch of people that are kind of ordering that ahead of time in order to fund maybe the injection molding costs or maybe to fund the minimum order quantities or whatever it is you're producing, instead, they are becoming an investor in your company. And all those people are kind of condensed to one line item on the cap table, which is all financial jargon, right? One line item on the cap table into one LLC or SPV that invests in your company. So it makes, your sheet really neat. The other thing I'll say here is the cool thing about this is when people invest in your company, they also begin to evangelize for your brand. In the same way that, if you're invested in stocks, it really behooves you to use those services because then the entire company does well. So these people are investing in your company. They're becoming a part of your community. They're evangelizing your brand. And the cool thing as well is that, when they're actually joining this movement, you then get to do what you want with the funds that you've raised. Versus with Kickstarter, Indiegogo, you got to fulfill on those rewards. You got to ship out those products. With a Reg CF campaign, regulation crowdfunding, you can actually do what you want with the funds. So as long as you're not doing anything like crazy, right? It obviously has to be company expenditures in that way, but you really can build the company the way that you want. So that's why this is so gosh darn powerful, and why something I want to talk about on today's episode is how this individual raised over $1 million doing this without terribly much work. And they share with you exactly on the podcast what they did to get funding, what they did to get attention, what they did in order to have this thing be a massive moment in the career of the company, in the lifetime of the company, in order to bring in so much funding to then be able to expand. And I think they have a really great mission as well when it comes to helping women entrepreneurs, helping female entrepreneurs specifically. So you're going to hear about all of that on today's show. And I think the number one thing to take away is, number one, this is happening and this is a trend. And that's exactly why I started this podcast, right? This is to pay attention to trends, new things that are coming about so that I don't sound crazy when I'm talking about it on my YouTube channel, which if you haven't yet, go and check out my YouTube channel, search my name, Salvador Briggman, right? I'm also on Instagram. You can search my name. You can also hit me up on my blog, crowdcrux.com, etc. This podcast you listen to on Spotify, listen to on iTunes. You're walking to work, maybe you're taking a walk in the park, maybe you're going to the gym, cleaning your house, whatever it is. I appreciate you, man. And I'm really trying to help. So this is something that's just so not covered in this industry. It's almost a disgrace to me, in my opinion. And it's one of the reasons why I am stepping up. I'm taking control, and I'm going to share with you the things that are working right now when it comes to crowdfunding, specifically Reg CF. So that's what today's episode is all about. If you want to learn more about this, I have a free course you can check out at crowdcrux.com/equity course. Just go to the link crowdcrux, crowdcrux.com/equity course. Go to the link, enter your name and email, and you'll start getting some of my free videos to warm you up to how this whole process works with regulation crowdfunding. In addition, if you want to get access to that map or the playbook, right, when it comes to this emerging industry. And again, this is probably going to shift and change. I'm going to have to update this thing like a mofo over time, but I really want to get something out there at least to kind of just, whet your appetite and also give you an idea of how this whole industry works, right, from the very early stages. So you can go to Equity Crowdfunding Explained on Audible. This link is crowdcrux.com/equity audio. crowdcrux.com/equity audio, crowdcrux.com/equity audio. That link will take you to Audible. If you want to, you can get a free 30-day trial of Audible, and you'll also then get a copy of the book, which is pretty freaking nice deal, and I like that. So that being said, let's really dive into this. Let's get to the crux of how this individual was able to raise $1 million using Reg CF on WeFunder, and it's coming up right after this. If you're worried about the fulfillment and shipping part of your Kickstarter campaign when it comes to getting out all those perks and rewards to your backers, rest assured, I've put together a complete Kickstarter fulfillment and shipping checklist for you, and it's free. This is sponsored by the folks at Fulfillrite, and they thought that you should have this checklist as part of your arsenal going into a crowdfunding campaign. If you want to get instant access to this checklist and it's free, you can go to fulfillrite.com/checklist. Again, that is fulfillrite.com/checklist, fulfillrite.com/checklist. Just go to that link and you can download it immediately. Hey guys, welcome back to the Crowdfunding Demystified podcast. Today we have an epic interview for you for the only e-commerce platform selling women-owned products and services. And this campaign has already hit that big $1 million mark, and they are soaring past that. And we have Kate today on the show to talk all about that. Kate, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Definitely. So I love we can get started. Maybe you could just tell listeners a bit about how you stumbled on this problem and really started to work to come up with a solution to this.
You bet. Really, the business started from necessity. So in 2020, we started to all hear about the effect that the pandemic was having on women, and it was so disproportionate. And everyone started to online shop. And I spent most of my career in technology and was just very devastated by the whole thing and thought, there's got to be a solution. And so I started looking around and realized that there was no e-commerce platform that was directly supporting women-owned businesses, where all the revenue stayed with women-owned businesses. So by the spring of 2020, we launched our efforts to create the platform, and then we opened to shoppers in September of 2020.
And why do you think that's something that you're so passionate about? Helping women entrepreneurs and also helping women connect with those business owners. Why do you think that's something that's you're passionate about specifically?
So a couple of things, having spent a lot of years in technology where there are very few women was really, formative for me. And most of my career was actually outside the US. And so I spent it in places that were really interesting. Some of them fabled to be hostile to women, and some of them just see females in a different light. And it was just so educational. So I was in the Middle East, I was in Central Asia and Eastern Europe, I was in Africa. And so having done that, I learned about International Women's Day, where the rest of the world outside the US and a little bit the UK celebrate International Women's Day on March 8th. It's 112 years old this year. And they celebrate women's contributions across a variety of areas, cultural, economics, social, not just motherhood. And so it really made an impact on me. And when I came back to Seattle, I was still working for a technology company, but decided that there needed to be some sort of celebration for that. And Seattle couldn't find one. And so a friend of mine and I started a nonprofit that actually hosts an event every year. And so we're on our 7th year this year.
Congratulations. The other thing I saw is that this isn't your first rodeo, right? This isn't your first startup. Can you just talk a tiny bit about that as well?
You bet. It certainly isn't. And thank goodness, I think, because, I came from a global tech company and I worked in all those places and I lived there. And so I opened subsidiaries and things. And then I left that company and was hired by a board and investors to run a healthcare digital health startup. And I thought, oh, how hard can this be? And I know exactly how hard now because I didn't have the funding and the infrastructure or anything. And I was so ill equipped to be successful at that, that unfortunately I made all the mistakes that, sort of arrogance and inexperience bring together on that startup. And this one has been completely different. And I believe that we are so far ahead and we have really structured and done things differently based on the learnings that I had from the first one.
And for you, when you're thinking about that experience and that journey of having started these different companies and grown them, are there any lessons that kind of come to your mind that you're really applying to this new company that you've launched? You've already got a lot of traction around. What are some of the lessons you've learned from those other experiences?
Yeah, there's a couple of things is, one of the obvious things is be smart about where you invest and be very focused. There's a very fine line in startups between searching for product market fit and audience and focus, because while you have a tendency to want to do everything, it's rare that you'd have funding or brand recognition or any of the resources to do that. And what I have found is focusing and really honing a message and honing a mission for what you're doing is critical. The other piece of that is, healthcare was not a place where I had a network or I had a tremendous amount of passion. I think there is a huge business opportunity there, but it wasn't my place. And I didn't bring to the party the network and the passion and the, sort of credibility in that space that I do in this space. And it's made a tremendous amount of difference.
Yeah, it sounds like that. We can talk about that in just a second. But just to go back to your first one, honing a message. So, why do you feel like that is so critically important for someone who's starting a new company?
I think it's really important because you don't have the resources to land multiple messages. So when you're looking for product market fit and you're talking to people, I think marketers everywhere, but especially in startup, we get tired of the message. We get tired of saying it because it feels like it gets old and it gets stale. But in reality, our customers that we're trying to reach need to hear it so many times because they're not as steeped or immersed in what you're trying to say to them. And so really finding that message, and I'd say talking to who you believe your target is.
Mm.
So that's a really interesting thing for us because we're a marketplace. We have two primary targets being our sellers and our people who sell services and products on the platform, and the shoppers that are buying, so the consumers. And we need to be really thoughtful about those messages need to be different, but echo the same mission. And they can't be all over the map. And so we have worked very hard to hone those messages and to be clear about what we do. And we always do it. And we do it again and again. And, we have a small team, but we get tired of those messages like, oh my gosh, should we have to say that again?
Yeah, it can sound like you're repeating yourself. So I was interned in college at Springboard Enterprises, which is like a helper boot camp for female entrepreneurs. And
Mhm.
one of the things I learned there is just like the CEO is kind of the keeper and the reiterator of the vision, right?
Mhm. Yep.
You just gotta keep reiterating it, right?
Yep.
Just because it has to sink in over time.
That's it.
Uh,
And you've got to be consistent with that vision. That's the other thing, both to the customers and to the team. It's got to be authentic and it's got to be, really how you get to that vision and how you get to success can be adjusted. But if you've got a vision, stick with the vision. I think that's part of the key to success too.
So I was looking through for just to kind of transition here to your WeFunder campaign. Like I was looking through your campaign and you have so many incredible people who have come out and said nice things. You have
Mhm.
people saying, as a female entrepreneur amongst a community of entrepreneurs, this is a killer opportunity. You have other people here, Cynthia saying, I work in the marketplace and I'm passionate about equality. You have other people saying, I'm currently a student. This is an awesome concept, great work. You have a lot of people just kind of have coming out of the woodworks and singing your praises here with this.
Yeah, one of the things that I'm really not surprised at, but I'm so thrilled that it's getting some play is when we started this, people would say to me, I'm sure there's another one, right? You can't be the only one. And then you start to look around and they go, oh my gosh, this is the only one. And so, the idea that there are 14 million businesses, women owned businesses in the US today, that there is not a big e commerce or social platform that is women owned is sort of head scratching, right? You kind of go, there has to be something. But to have some visibility to that and to be able to raise that and say, listen, women make over 80% of purchasing decisions. We are an active part of the economy, so we should share in that economy and we should be big players in that. And I think that's where we came from. And I believe that raising awareness with this campaign, that we are the only ones and we're starting that trend. And hopefully we won't be the only ones forever, honestly. I mean, there's room for lots of people in the marketplace that are women owned big businesses. And that's one of the things we aspire to.
For you, when did WeFunder or Reg CF, when did that idea really begin to germinate in your mind?
So it was really interesting when we raised a pre-seed fund, and we did it right after we launched because we realized that we used some off the shelf software that needed some help, actually. And so we invested a lot there. We had a little bit of marketing money, and so we started to go down that path and started to think about, what are we trying to do? And really what we talk about is being the economic engine for women. And you make money two ways as women, right? One is in wages and salaries for sure. And the other one is investment. And everyone does that. But the majority of women are not eligible investors. So they're not accredited investors. And so they miss out on the ability to earn income and increase their economic platform
Build
via
wealth. Yeah.
investment. Yeah. And so when we started to think about what are we trying to do in that economic engine, we want to make sure that women have the opportunity to share in this success, not only to have a platform that offers them favorable terms and a community and support as an e-commerce platform that is, making them money on their products and services, but also they should share in that success when we believe that we're going to be very successful. And so it just became such an obvious fit for us to do this.
Yeah, so it sounds like it's a way for people to get involved with, supporting women entrepreneurs and also, using the service, but then also to own a piece of the pie, kind of, right?
That's it.
And to really participate.
That's it. And, I know that the stats are quoted all the time and we find it so frustrating. Women get 2% of the venture capital. It's right around, it hovers between, 1.8 and 2.5%, really, but it's nothing. And so it just becomes this exercise in futility too. It's like we fight over the crumbs when big investors decide to invest 98% of their money in businesses that underperform.
Mm.
And so I say that very specifically, not to, not to rally up, but numbers don't lie. And numbers always say that the return on investment in women-led companies is significantly higher and faster. And so I kind of think, okay, well, we could spend all our time saying that, or we could really follow our mission and follow our brand and allow women and frankly men. I wouldn't say, people who want to be involved and want to be allies and want to, support this mission come in all forms from everywhere, and we don't
For
want to turn
sure.
that away. And
Yeah, I
so
mean, at the end of the day, it's about families too, right?
yeah,
So,
it is. And so
um,
I'm excited about it. I think it's the perfect platform for us to raise funds.
very cool. So there's a lot of mystery, I think, around the process when it comes to Reg CF, when it comes to WeFunder. Are there any kind of things you had to do leading up to this launch that you could share with the audience when people are like, this sounds so cool, but I have like no idea really where to get started here? Do you have any things that you had to do leading up to this launch?
Yeah, I think that there's complexity raising money no matter how you do it. So, and I think a lot of new entrepreneurs are not aware of that, and it becomes really cumbersome and very complex as they get into it. One of the things that we found is really the WeFunder is like a detailed marketing campaign, first and foremost. So, when we presented what we do in our mission, sort of the marketing side to explain what we're doing, that is a pitch deck, all over the place, and that's very normal. The other piece of it was, the legal audits that we've done on our books.
Mhm.
And that was more cumbersome and more complicated, but we were very fortunate. We found an auditor that, kind of dug in, and it took a couple of months to do the audit. And coming out of that as a startup, I feel great. I mean, it gives me a stamp of confidence to go into any conversation when, people say, well, what do your finances look like? And I can point to an audit and say, here you go. They've been audited by an accredited auditor. So
Mhm.
that was a little bit different. But then from that point, it's sort of like we did due diligence that would happen during the funding cycle. We did it all in advance to open our campaign.
Got it. Got it. So you had to do a lot of things in terms of the process with getting financials in order, really getting the marketing together, and it probably took a couple of months, right, to do that.
It didn't, I don't think it was out of the ordinary. It was a couple of months. And, we had to do a video, which is always, find time,
Exciting.
get the right,
Yeah.
yeah, or dread worthy.
I can't believe that. I'm sure you've given a lot of talks, and been in front of the
Yeah,
camera before.
yeah.
Um, well, yeah. So basically, you're getting the entire team on the page of getting this out there, so many people can participate in the opportunity. Not just women, but also men, and really raising awareness. What did it kind of feel like that week before you really went live? What were some of the things going through your mind there?
Well, it's obvious it is a very public display of what you're doing, and you're either going to be successful in here support or not. And it's a little terrifying because that is very exposed as a business. Because, when you are raising money and you are talking about your business as you're ramping up, there's some degree of anonymity when you're, just regular startups, because people don't know all your books, they don't see everything. And this was very exposed because, of the audit and the fact that it's on a public platform and people can look at it. And
Mm,
so it was nerve wracking. And then you think, what if no one's interested in this mission?
yeah.
What if we didn't have those people come out and support? And so, that I think it's just that exposure. And I am, as you read some of those, I love those. There's one, it's from a man investor who talked about he was investing because his mother was a single mother and she, supported him and he wanted to give back. It's stuff like that that make you really feel like this is why I'm doing this. And this makes me feel so great.
Mm,
And, for us, it's not just investing in us. We have over 500 brands. I think it's 530 some right now. And when people invest money in the WMarketplace, we turn around and reinvest that. So it's investing in over 500 women-owned companies, which is a
mhm.
little bit unique as well. And so for me, it was nerve-wracking to say, I want to be able to support all of these businesses. And I feel like I'm exposed to the public, but also to them because we've made a commitment to them to help them grow their businesses.
Tell me the story of when you really started to connect with the market and you started to see investment dollars actually coming in, and kind of how exciting that was. I'm sure that kind of assuaged a lot of those fears as well that you had.
Oh, absolutely. It was so fun. There was a few, we kind of rallied everyone we knew and said, okay, make a commitment. And then as we started, and it wasn't very long, it was within the first week, we started to see people outside of our networks that we didn't necessarily know start to invest. And
Mm,
that's a feeling it's indescribable. It's so exciting. It's like, when people start to buy products, it's the same sort of exhilaration. You go, oh, great, this is going to work. and it,
yeah.
it was so fun.
Yeah. And I think too, it even says a lot more if they're actually investing, right? Because they're
Yeah.
really making that commitment to that mission that you also
Hmm.
share.
That's it. And it is that commitment to the mission. And that's, we are, when I kind of go back to that message and what we're doing, we are on a mission. And we keep that in the forefront and talk about it all the time because that is the mission, is to create a platform for these businesses to grow and thrive. Really, that's it. And, I am always excited when people nod and shake their head because it's very tangible. It's not hyperbole, and it's not, yeah, that'll be great someday, or, sure, we'll support this kind of business, but you never do. This is
Mhm.
really tangible. It's like, I have, $250 and I'm going to support this business, and that's what I'm going to do. And so it's a very direct commitment.
When you hit that $1 million mark, which I think a lot of people, I mean, you're in a rare club, right? To be able to say you've done that online.
Mhm.
What was that like? Did you guys celebrate as a team? What kind of happened behind the scenes there?
Yeah, so we have a team of there's 6 of us now, and we're all remote, and 3 of us live in the same city. And my co-founder and I happen to be working in the same place that day, which is really not doesn't happen very often just because of COVID and convenience. And we happen to be in the same place, and not I will say we both got the email, knowing that we were close, and we both got an email from WeFunder at the same time, and there was simultaneous screaming. And like, oh my gosh, it was so exciting. And we have a habit of when there's big news for our team, because we've got one in Southern California, one in Northern California, one in New York, and then the rest in Seattle. And so we tend to do an all team call. And
Mhm.
so we did it immediately and called everybody just to say, oh my gosh, this is the milestone we've just hit.
Yeah, that's so big. And I think it means a lot more as well because you talk about gatekeepers and venture capitalists. I think you're now a great example of a female entrepreneur who's able to raise funds from the crowd without those gatekeepers, right? And really go directly to the source.
Yeah, and the other thing about that is wonderful about this process is that not all money is the same. And I would say, as an entrepreneur, I have learned that money that helps you and supports you versus monitors you, that's a big difference as an entrepreneur. This is money that is helping and supportive. And these, certainly every investor wants you to be successful. So I'm not, there's no question there. But how they help you and how they support you is vastly different. And we have been fortunate enough so far to attract investors. And there's a few, our lead investor, and then there's another large one that is very interested and engaged and excited about our business and already helping us move forward.
Hmm.
Whereas if you go traditional venture, some of them have expertise, but really it's all about the return and how quickly it is, and not necessarily about the supporting of the business mission.
Yeah, I mean, the other cool thing I think is that you just get international attention, which can be
Mhm.
really surprising, right? The fact
Yeah.
that some of these people who are in France or in different countries and they're interested in investing, like, that's so surprising, I think.
Well, I don't know that it's surprising. I think it's fabulous to have that global reach, because that's part of our aspiration, right? We want to start here, grow a good footprint, and expand.
Hmm.
But I also think that having the opportunity to get the word out, economic gender parity globally is slated at 257 years before we reach it. And that's the World Economic Fund report on gender gap.
Hmm.
And so, there is a lot to be said. So, bringing attention to this sort of a cultural and social issue through the work we're doing is a bonus to me. And so I'm thrilled with doing that.
So, and just a question, people that are listening to this podcast, they're probably looking like, oh my gosh, like, this woman has done three or multiple startups. She's written a book. She's now raised $1 million on WeFunder. It seems very like unattainable, right? Do you have
Yeah.
any like basic tips for someone who's thinking about doing a campaign, how to get the word out, or any advice on marketing this campaign if they end up going down this route? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, a couple of things. One is, when you talk about my position being unattainable, I kind of giggle because I am not that person. I am not the one who has a great education, started with a good network, had lots of financing. That is not me. And that's why I wrote the book, because it's a memoir about an average person. I am a 2018 college graduate, and I'm a little bit old for a college graduate at that point. I have my career before I went to college. And so, you don't have to have a great education. I spent the first 10 years of my life in a hotel, and not a nice one, a Holiday Inn. My father ran Holiday Inns. So I didn't start with that. And I think that oftentimes women, especially, self-select out. They see what you just said. Oh my gosh, I could never reach that. That is too far. It's not relatable. And I am a huge proponent of, why not give it a try? Because, you can. And
Mhm.
I started my career early. I had a husband and a child and people who depended on me, and I still kind of followed my aspirations and made it happen, and still do. And I think that, my advice to women entrepreneurs is not to self-select out. Find a group of people that help you realize your vision and that support your vision, because not everyone will.
Mhm.
And, keep those people close and find people who will encourage you along the way.
The last question I had for you on the marketing front, was there any kind of education you had to do in the way of this new Reg CF, this new WeFunder? Did you have to do any like webinars or calls or explain this to people, or did people kind of readily understand what it was?
No, they don't understand. And I still do this. I probably spend at least a couple hours a week talking to people, clarifying. And part of the commitment in the marketing and doing this kind of crowdfunding is to be available to do that, because lots of people ask. And so my co-founder and I did a lot of online research. We talked to our attorney. We watched lots of webinars. And so what we talk about is, how does this differ from normal, from traditional accredited investing? How can you get involved? What are the ramifications of this? And lots of people, assume that crowdfunding is something like Kickstarter or marketing a
Indiegogo,
get.
yeah.
Yeah. And so to try and say this is an equity crowdfunding exercise and here's what you get and here's the process. We spend a lot of time doing that. But I think, again, that's the investment we're making in our investors. And it is the communication that's open. And as I said, you want to find investors that are aligned with your mission. And the
Mhm.
best way to do that is talk to them.
Very cool, very cool. So in terms of your plans here, first of all, where can people go and learn more? But also, what are you planning to do in terms of, how long is your offering going to be open, or what are you planning to do afterwards? Any thoughts on that?
Yep. So our official close date is in April. We are hoping to close it faster than that, and we have just a little bit to go. I think today it's just about 300,000, just a little over 300,000 to go, which I'm so thrilled about, because the faster we close this round, the faster we can go put that money to work. And
Hmm.
so that's part of it. And really, what we have plans for is certainly continued marketing, continued. Now we have over a year's worth of data, and we know the categories that we've been successful in and kind of double down on those and win those. And we've been able to use the data that we have to tighten our strategy. We also have big plans for expanding our platform into really a unique platform for women owned businesses to connect with merchandising and professional services, and to
Hmm.
support those businesses as they grow. And that becomes what we've termed as the business web. And so we're very excited to begin to invest in developing that piece of the platform.
Exciting, exciting.
They can go to the WMarketplace.com, or they can go on WeFunder to the W Marketplace. And
Awesome.
as I said, we're raising now, and they can go and find out about our fundraise, but they can also shop. It's Black History Month, and we allow shop by community. So they can shop by lots of different communities and sort of sort by not only supporting the 500 businesses in general, but also narrow that down into driving dollars to where your passion lies.
Very cool. So my final question for you is, if you can speak directly to the listeners, and we can end on this note, you could leave them with either a word of encouragement, something that you wish you knew when you were just in those early days, could be a WeFunder tip or a Reg CF tip, or anything else you'd like to share with them, and we can end on that note.
Absolutely. I'd say, uh, I have always lived by the why not me? Why not try it? If you see success or you see something you really like, go for it. I mean, Why not? And so I would encourage people, because that goes across my whole life in terms of my businesses, my WeFunder campaign. Why not? Why can't we raise $1.5 million crowdfunding? I think we can.
Well said. Thank you so much for coming on, and great advice and great tips, and look forward to seeing your success here as it goes.
Thank you so much. It was great to talk.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Crowdfunding Demystified podcast. Again, my name is Salvador Briggman. Thank you for joining me on today's episode of the podcast of Crowdfunding Demystified. You can listen to this podcast on Spotify, on iTunes, on YouTube. I publish a version there. And this is really just designed to always have your fingers on the pulse, to always make sure that you're filling your head with actionable teachings, tactics, lessons that you can apply to your crowdfunding campaign, and also making you aware of things that you might not be aware of, right? So crowdfunding is such a huge industry. I'm telling you, man, there's nonprofit fundraising, there's GoFundMe, personal crowdfunding, there's real estate crowdfunding, putting out more videos on that soon. There's, equity crowdfunding, what we just talked about. There's Kickstarter, there's Indiegogo. Like, this industry is humongous. And I really want to try to just condense all of this for you so you can be, just attuned to what right now really people are using, what is having results. And I'm not talking about just like ordinary results. I'm talking about like $1 million results. Like, what are the big enchiladas doing in this industry, right? What are the head honchos doing when it comes to crowdfunding? And that's really what I love to do, is share those things for you. One of the things also, I think this is a great opportunity to reflect. So it's important to reflect, like, what do you really want out of this process? What do you really want out of life? What is missing right now? And also when it comes to your project, when it comes to your goal, what is it that you're really trying to achieve? What do you feel like hasn't been working? And if you could just do one thing that would kind of make this so much easier, what would that thing be? Because a lot of the times I'll do a coaching call, and I actually had a recent example of this where an individual came on the call and like, I'm trying to do this, this, and this. And I'm like, okay, that makes sense. But then why are you going with this one particular platform? Why don't you go with this other one? And it was like a light bulb moment. And they were like, Sal, like, no one had ever said that before, right? And it's kind of exciting because it means that, sometimes you have a great idea, or you have a great project or a great product, but you aren't necessarily synced up with the right platform, or you aren't always synced up with the right approach. Or you listen to, a bunch of people online talking about marketing, and all of a sudden you're going with that approach. And then you find out actually they didn't really know what they were talking about. So there's a lot of, missed opportunity. There's a lot of going down the wrong path and discovering that midway and having to turn around and go down the other path, right? And this is one of the biggest senses of frustration for me in my own life. And I think that it's one of the reasons why I'm gosh darn so passionate about sharing education, about sharing things that can help you level up, right? About investing in my own teachings and education and mentors and coaches and courses and books. Like, I'm always learning something. I'm always trying to, even if it's just for a couple minutes a day, 5 minutes a day, I'm always trying to learn something new to push me towards my goals. And a lot of my students say the exact same thing. I think it's something we actually share in common, is just that commitment to ourselves, commitment to our own success. So one of the things that I do, and one of the things I think can be extremely beneficial for anyone who is considering going down the route of crowdfunding, whether that is a regulation crowdfunding campaign, whether it's Kickstarter, Indiegogo, eCommerce, in any kind of way, you want to make sure that you're on the right path. And for the number of years, I was not willing to do individual coaching calls. And the reason is that it's just tiring and it takes up a lot of my time, right? And I think there are better ways to, also impact the world in terms of the courses I've made, the books I've made. But at a certain point in time, we're having discussions internally. I'm like, you know what? There's just a certain level of impact that I can have one-on-one. And that's why I think that, honestly, while it does take up a lot of my schedule, and while it is something that, requires a lot more effort and time to review clients' projects and to really understand what they're trying to achieve and recommend good things, it's something that I always at least want to incorporate and include in my life. So if you want to take advantage of this opportunity in order to do a one-on-one intensive coaching call with me, with Salvador Briggman, and to really get serious about this project, and not only that, to invest in this process, to invest in yourself, to invest in your success, I think this is one of the best ways to not only, have a clear, crystal clear layout of what you got to do next, of the action you have to take next, of the resources that you should be taking advantage of who you should be working with, etc. But also, I've saved people thousands of dollars with my coaching calls when all of a sudden they're trying to go with this one videographer firm or this other marketer, this other thing, and they're about to waste thousands of dollars on this. And I'm like, dude, you don't have to do that. You can get them for a fraction of the cost. So to me, This is a service that should be involved in every industry. I wish this was, to be able to access coaches at an affordable rate, to be evolved, to be incorporated into every industry. But it's something that I've always wanted to include in this one. And that's why I make myself accessible as much as I can when it comes to doing these individual calls. You maybe have left a comment on my YouTube video or sent me an IG message, a DM, and I haven't gotten back to you, or email, just because I get so much, right? It's just a flurry. It's always like a fire hose of communication that's being sent my way. So this is really one way to kind of corner off that section of my schedule when it comes to your project and your time. And we can go through that as well as action items and homework, and really come away from that just feeling way more confident going into the process. So that sounds something interesting to you. Go and check out this link. And I'm also going to share after that one free link as well. But you can go and check out this link at crowdcrux.com/coaching. That link is crowdcrux.com/coaching, crowdcrux.com/coaching. This is a paid intensive coaching call. It's designed for people that are looking to really seriously take action and want to invest in that process. crowdcrux.com/coaching, crowdcrux.com/coaching. And the other quick link I want to share with you is that I do a newsletter. I'm not sure if you're aware. I've been doing it for many years now, and I'm starting to revamp some of the content and actually put out some new things that I've been working on privately behind the scenes. So if you're interested in getting access to that, you can just go to my free newsletter. This is a killer crowdfunding tips newsletter that I do, and you can go to this link at crowdcrux.com/newsletter. That's crowdcrux.com/newsletter, crowdcrux.com/newsletter. We're sharing some great stuff there in the coming weeks. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate you. Hope you have a good rest of your week, and I will see you next time.